You're on a spiritual journey. You take yoga, you work with blessed crystals. Perhaps you even work with a master teacher. But do all of these experiences actually lead to awakened consciousness? Well, I'm here today with Barbara De Angelis to talk about what really needs to happen so that we can truly have a soul shift. Barbara, thanks for being here.
I love what you said. It's beautiful and it's true.
You know, I was reading your new book, Soul Shifts, and you talk a lot about vibrational credibility. What do you mean by that?
Well, vibrational credibility comes from vibrational transformation. Transformation has to come from the inside out. It's not about revelations, it's not about collecting experiences. It's shifting on the vibrational level of consciousness so that from there, everything on the outside of your life shifts. And the truth is we all have soul shifts all the time. Everyone can remember a time they had a revelation or a life-changing event perhaps that was challenging, but they felt different afterwards. The problem is most of us think they're random, that they just happen if we're lucky or if we pray hard enough or if we travel thousands of miles to India or Peru. We can learn to have soul shifts all the time and create the conditions that allow us to shift into our highest, because the point is we're not actually missing anything. We already are that. We've just disconnected a bunch of circuits.
Right.
So it's learning, how do we connect back in again? How do we reprogram? How do we update our spiritual software so we can be truly living, radiating, and vibrating as the amazing being that we are?
And I want to talk about vibration specifically. What does that even mean?
It's actually physics. You know, when I write in Soul Shifts about spiritual physics, everything is vibration. You know, the beautiful ocean is vibrating matter, it's vibrating H2O. The flower, you, if you're sitting with your dog or cat, everything in the universe is vibrating matter. Some of it vibrates very quickly, some of it vibrates very slowly. So a rock looks solid, but it's matter just the same as the air where we can't see anything. All shifting, all transformation has to take place vibrationally so that when people meet you, it's not that you just sound good or you have a great message. You're actually vibrating with each other all the time. We're vibrating together right now in a beautiful, harmonious
Right.
way. You're all vibrating, feeling us, listening to us. But it's not just the words that people are being affected by. It's the vibration. And in fact, we're all affecting the planet every minute with the vibrational broadcast that we're putting out. The question is, what are you broadcasting? Not what are you saying, not even what you're thinking. What are you broadcasting out? So when we shift, really shift from the inside, we are living the highest vibration. We're broadcasting the highest vibration, and we're actually uplifting and changing the planet by vibrating at such a high level. So real transformation is recalibrating ourselves with simple techniques and understanding all this. So we're not just wrapping ourselves with spiritual wrapping paper, but it's covering up a lot of things that maybe aren't vibrating at the highest.
So what happens when we have an intention to appear a certain way on the outside, but on the inside something else is going on?
Meaning like what people experience every day.
Right.
I call this wobbly. When we get wobbly, you know how you have a table and one of the legs is off in a restaurant and it drives you crazy? A lot of people are very wobbly. We have a lot of mastery in one area. Another area isn't that way. So you could be saying the most uplifting things to people. You could have an amazing message that you do even for your work. Maybe you're a healer, you're a chiropractor, whatever it is. If you're not vibrating in that way, it creates what I call vibrational dissonance. You've experienced that with people.
Yes.
Where there's something off. And it would be like watching a movie that, let's say, is a romantic movie about people falling in love. But the soundtrack was scary music or angry music. We all have a vibrational soundtrack. Isn't that a great way to think about it?
It's amazing.
And so there's a vibrational soundtrack playing behind us. So whatever you're saying, or even what you're presenting, is not affecting people as much as that vibe, that vibrational soundtrack. That's why you meet somebody and you say, love them, 3 seconds. We're the same. Or, I don't know what it is about that person, it feels really uncomfortable. You're hearing, in a sense, their vibrational soundtrack. One of the reasons I wrote Soul Shifts was because everybody watching right now has experiences when they're at their highest, and then they have experiences when they're at their lowest. We all have those high moments. We understand the universe, we feel in tune, we're wonderful, we love ourselves.
Everything's working.
And then we have the other experiences. Why is it sometimes that we're at our highest? Why is it that we're at our not highest? Why do we drift? Why do some people make us drift? These are what I call the sacred questions. Sacred questions that real soul shifters and real seekers ask. And by the way, I want to honor everybody right now who's watching this. If you're watching, it's not random, it's not an accident. You're a member of what I call the Cosmic Advance Team. Your cosmic alarm clock has gone off. What is that? Something inside of you that says, there's a reason I'm here. Why am I sometimes feeling so enlightened? Why am I sometimes feeling so disconnected? What's my purpose? These are sacred questions, questions of real seekers. So even though you may think those questions disqualify you and make you confused, they actually qualify you, and that means something profound has happened to you. You are waking up. We're waking up together, and that's what's so beautiful about what we're doing and what you're doing.
Absolutely. And why did you write the book Soul Shifts right now at this time?
We're in a time of tremendous spiritual velocity, tremendous acceleration on the planet. And most people who are watching probably can look back on the last year, 2, 3 years of your life and say, so much is changing, so many challenges I didn't expect, so many tests. These things don't mean you're doing something wrong. It means you're in what I call spiritual graduate school.
And it's hard work.
Spiritual graduate, graduate school is a lot harder than kindergarten.
Right.
And if you're in spiritual graduate school, you are challenged more. You're asked to contemplate more. You're asked to relinquish more. There are so many seekers out there who, since I began this work in the 1960s, have been on a path. They're learning, they're growing. Maybe they're doing yoga, maybe they're eating well. They want to become more conscious, but they're not always understanding there's methods, there's ways, there's really a spiritual handbook, so that instead of just thinking about it, hoping for it, you can actually live what I call practical spirituality. It's easy to feel enlightened when you're on a meditation retreat.
Right.
Or you're in your yoga class, or you're reading the Course in Miracles, or you're at a seminar, or whatever it is. What happens when our kids are driving us crazy?
Right.
What happens when the person you love shuts down? Where does our spirituality go? So this is why I wanted to write Soul Shift, to say there's a way in a minute to bring yourself back to your highest and not just be living with what I call emotional whack-a-mole. Those things where the moles come up and you have to hit them. This is how a lot of us think of spiritual growth or personal growth. We think of it as management, control. Control freaks, you are. I'm going to manage it. Oh, negative thought, push it down. Fear, I'm going to push it down. I'm going to affirm. That's management. That's not mastery. Mastery is when you don't have to keep reminding yourselves how to think better, act better. Something has shifted. You've recalibrated from the inside. So there's so many seekers out there, and I wanted to write something to help them, in a sense, give them a map. That's what teachers really should do, is give you a map to make your journey easier. Don't go here. Watch out for this. This doesn't mean you're in the wrong place. It means you're in the right place. The response has just been fantastic, because people want to know they're doing the right thing, and they want to know they're not lost, even though they might be experiencing what I call the divine discomfort.
You talk in the book about everything matters, and that we can't choose the days that we want to be congruent and be in alignment, and the days that we want to take a hall pass.
That's right.
That we have to be present and show up for our lives all the time.
I love that you brought that up and chose that. Everything counts. The problem with a lot of us is we feel that we're going to negotiate our consciousness and negotiate our awakening. I was good for a few days, I went on a retreat, so now I can gossip with my friend. How many days do we actually have left to live? 6,000, 7,000. Every day, 220,000 people leave the planet. They're not here anymore. What day would they say was negotiable? And I always say to people, if you took a calendar right now, looked at the days you have for the rest of your life, which days would you cross off that don't count? Which days would you cross off and say, I'm not going to be in my highest that day, not going to be as open with my loved one, not going to be as committed. Those days don't really matter. Those days would mean anything to somebody who had only a few days left to live. Those days are precious. So everything counts. Living in our highest in every day, figuring out how to do that is the greatest legacy that we can live. It's also the way we can make the greatest difference on the planet. You don't need a business card or to do what you do or what I do to make a difference. I say in Soul Shifts, we're always making a difference, whether we know it or not. The question is, what difference are we making?
When we are having a soul shift, how can we tell?
I'll tell you how you cannot tell. Okay, people think a soul shift, I became one with spirit, I felt complete well-being. Sometimes the symptom of a soul shift is you feel what I call spiritual vertigo. You don't recognize things in your life. You feel that things are really different. There's so much changing, you can't get grounded. Your definition of who you are or what you think you should be doing is changing, so that you have to let go of a lot of things. A restlessness sometimes, that even though we acquire certain things or achieve certain things, they're not fulfilling what we thought they would, a feeling there's something more. These are the symptoms, by the way, of what I call divine discomfort, where we're really moving quickly. Most people think they're symptoms of depression or something's wrong, but they're not. A soul shift means shifting into the right vantage point. It would be like if I couldn't see something beautiful outside, or I was just staring at the wall and someone said, just move over 2 inches.
Right.
You move over just 2 inches. And then, wow, the view opened up. Mm-hmm. We can shift just in a few seconds inside of us, seeing things from the highest place, what I call the penthouse of our consciousness, versus the basement. And we all know what the basement of our consciousness feels like. We can shift into, for instance, if you're upset, if you're stressed about something, rather than thinking, I can't believe this is happening. Simple soul shift. Ask the question, what choice am I making right now? What choice am I making? Wow. Not what is someone doing to me? What choice am I making? Instantly our higher self is activated. Well, I'm making the choice to be pissed off. I'm making the choice to separate. I'm making the choice to judge myself. I don't really want to do that. The minute you say, what choice am I making? That question is asked by our highest, which is already intact. So there's so many soul shifts I talk about how to make. That's just an example. Second question would be, what's a more enlightened choice I can make right now?
I think you're making such an important point, but do you think that people really understand that they have the power to make that choice? I mean, some people feel like they're just adrift, like the world happens to them, they're a victim of their circumstances.
Exactly.
So this is a much more empowered position.
It's not just a position, it's the truth. And I've been teaching for decades, and one of the jobs of a teacher is to articulate the abstract and make it very concrete. And this, when you said, do people understand it? It's my job to help them understand it. That's right. What you're doing with this beautiful program. Giving people understanding in practical ways. I have people who have read Soul Shifts or study with me, from somebody who's never opened a book like this in their life to the most advanced spiritual seekers and teachers. That is up to me. How do I articulate things and make them real for people? I think people do understand it, and everyone knows what it's like to drift. Everyone knows what it's like to feel wobbly. Everybody knows what it's like to say, why yesterday did I feel so clear? What happened between now and then? So teachers are really map makers. They help you cross bridges, and it's just my honor to do that. I love doing it.
I liked what you talked about in the book, where it's not about aspiring to achieve greatness, but it's more about creating a foundation for greatness. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, you're talking about, when I said prepare yourself for greatness.
Right.
I say, and I know it's true, and actually physicists tell us this, and so do all spiritual teachers, you're wired for greatness. You're wired for greatness. Your consciousness, your amazing body, your amazing brain is wired for maximum voltage. We're all wired the same. It's that we disconnect circuits. We disconnect because we get hurt. We disconnect because we don't want to feel a lot. We disconnect because we're disappointed in life. We think it's going to protect us. And I have a saying, our protections are really our prisons. They imprison us. So we are wired for enlightenment, and it's not about waiting till one day everything's perfect in your life. It's in each moment, learning how to operate from the highest, vibrate from the highest, love from the highest. And when you do that enough, that becomes the norm. The other times become the moments when perhaps you slipped into something else. That's the soul shift that everybody deserves to have.
We had such a fun conversation when we were getting ready to do this interview, and we talked about the story in your book about making a cake. So will you just share with us a little bit about the cake?
It's one of my favorite, it's one of people's favorite parts of the book. I've been on a spiritual path for a long, long time. I started out as a meditation teacher actually in 1969. What I've seen in the personal growth movement a lot is that people mistake experiences and revelations for transformation. Having an experience, even having an understanding about yourself, is not transformation, it's the ingredient for transformation. And I tell a story about somebody wanting to bake a cake, and they decide they're going to go get the best eggs from a farmer who was chanting the Bhagavad Gita to the chickens, and so the chickens are vibrating at the highest, and they're going to go to Hawaii, and they're going to visit a shaman, and while they're there, they're going to get sugar that is vibrating with the Hawaiian waters, and then they're going to go to South America to get chocolate, and while they're there, they're going to have a past life reading, and they bring everything home, and they lay it out on the counter, and their friends come over, and they say, let me tell you about my travels. Here's the eggs, here's this, here's that. Where's the cake? Where's the cake? Cake means things have been baked. They've had an alchemy. And you know, if you have a cake, you can't find the eggs anymore. You can't find the sugar. You can't find anything. It's turned into something. It's transmuted. Spiritual experiences are great. Visiting teachers is great. Reading is fantastic. Read my book, read everybody's books.
Right.
Watching wonderful programs like this is great. But it's not the work, it's the ingredients. The work is internal. The work is something where we have to watch ourselves, watch our choices in each moment, understand what it means to be more expanded or contracted, like I talk about in Soul Shifts. That's what bakes all of those experiences, all of that knowledge into wisdom. Knowledge and information is one thing. Wisdom is when something's been baked in you. Nothing and no one can take it away from you, even the most horrible experience that you have. That wisdom prevails. It's who you are. You've shifted into your highest.
You talk a lot about we don't need to go out and seek something new. We actually need to just excavate ourselves and remember who we really are.
Remembrance is one of my favorite words, but I'm not talking about saying I am divine. You know, you can be driving along going, I am divine, and I want to kill that driver over there. So
I'm in divine road rage,
you know,
right?
yes, yes, it is true that, everything is vibrating consciousness, and we all are, if we are all are reflections of the highest, that we are all the same, and therefore we are spirit. But if we're not experiencing it, then we're not living what I call practical spirituality. How do you bring that into an experience, not a thought? And I talk about shifting from positive thinking to positive vibrating, to actually be vibrating the truth, not just telling yourself that. A lot of people are actually having what I call a lot of spiritual collisions. They're saying, I should be this, I should be feeling love. They're not feeling it. There's actually tension and dissonance inside of them because they're making themselves feel guilty, in a sense, for their humanity. It's not about getting rid of our humanity. It's elevating it up. It's infusing it with divinity in a very practical way. When I tell people this, and I give lectures to 3,000, 5,000 people, they start to cry because a lot of them have been struggling with, battling with their humanity, thinking that it's evidence that something's wrong with them, as opposed to seeing the divinity in it. This is so important, and it's what I call, it is really spiritual graduate school, because when I started out as well, when I was 18, I thought, I'm going to meditate away anything wrong with me. I'm just going to be in bliss consciousness at all times, and I'm never going to have a negative thought. I'm never going to get angry. I'll never have anything bad happen to me. That's a kindergarten understanding of what awakening is.
We've talked several times about practical spirituality. Why does spirituality need to be practical?
Everything needs to be practical. If something's not, you've heard, everyone has heard, we're all spiritual beings having a human experience. The idea, conceptual living doesn't help anybody. It would be like saying, conceptually, I have a beautiful mansion, and conceptually, I help people, and conceptually, I'm a doctor. I'm not actually a doctor, but in my head, I'm healing people. Life isn't conceptual. It's practical. It's real. Love is another example, for instance. You can have the thought, I love someone. It has to be practical. You have to show it. You have to have patience. You have to have compassion. Bringing the invisible down to the visible is what we're here for. That's what the Earth planet is. We're in school. It's not to remember there's somewhere else and try to go there as quickly as possible. It's to bring heaven on earth. So practical spirituality means what techniques and practices can you learn, can you use so that every day you can live as the highest spirit. You can bring the spiritual values in, but not because you're reminding yourself, because they're actually a part of who you are. You've, in a sense, shifted and recalibrated your vibration to your true high self. That doesn't happen in a day or a week, but it does happen. And it's something that when it happens is permanent.
If you were to say something to someone who's watching this program and they're just waking up, they've just stumbled upon this program, what's their first step?
The first step is to honor yourself. If you're watching this beautiful program, this beautiful vibrational transmission, it means your cosmic alarm clock went off. And I want to tell you something, and this is true. The hardest part of your spiritual journey is already over. You remembered that you needed to remember, right? You remembered that you'd been asleep. When we're asleep, we don't know we're asleep. Last night, everyone was sleeping. You didn't realize you were asleep until you woke up, and you thought, oh my gosh, I just woke up. How long was I asleep? When you realize you've been asleep, even though it might be uncomfortable to face it, even though you may look back and go, oh my God, how did I live that way? This is the greatest moment on a soul's journey. The hardest part of the journey truly is over. It's a great momentous experience of celebration on the planet. And when we first wake up, sometimes the first experience we have is shock. Shock is one of the great signs of spiritual transformation. I can't believe I fill in the blank, was so unconscious, married that person, whatever it was. That doesn't mean anything's wrong. It means light has come and you're seeing all the stuff in that room that you didn't see when there was no lights on. Turn on the switch and you see things. So being willing to see what there is means you're beginning your recalibration. So that's why I want to congratulate everybody who's watching.
Barbara De Angelis, author of Soul Shifts and so many other amazing books. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you for the honor of being here and part of the great mandala of transformation.